Hi there, my name is Adam Ramdin. I currently work for a ministry called Lineage Journey. I live here in the United Kingdom and live in a city just outside a city called Nottingham, where allegedly Robin Hood lived. I've been working in ministry for about 17 years, actually, no, probably 20 years now. Started off working as an evangelist for Amazing Facts, then worked as a pastor here in the UK. Then I also worked as a conference director, as a evangelism school director, as a youth director, as a personal ministries director. And it was while I was youth director, we started our ministry called Lineage. And it started out as a side project. It was just something that we did on the side. Whilst I was youth director, I had the vision to start it and try to create resources for young people to be able to consume that's not written, but to kind of create the written, make them into videos, and create a resource that people could learn from and learn about their history and their heritage. That side project or that project grew, and then it kind of became its own thing, and so it became its own ministry. And about 2.5 years ago, I stepped out of full-time conference employment to work with Lineage, initially part-time, and now I work full-time with Lineage. So my role with them is the executive producer, so I oversee kind of everything from the top. I'm the host as well, but kind of help guide the vision, the direction, and help with all the aspects of support for the ministry that they have. And so that's my current work with them. I've been doing that since we started. We have a small team of just about 10 people that work together on Lineage Journey. And yeah, we've just been very blessed and very grateful for the support of everyone, that we've been able to keep going and doing what we're doing, and that we're still, um, continuing to create resources, um, 8, 9 years on from when we started. So that's my current role with Lineage. We have a few projects coming up. We have a series called Women of Christian History that's coming out in a couple of weeks. We have a series on religious liberty that we're fundraising for next year. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'd like to send greetings to the Vida Plena ministry and the VUEC or VUEC group in Peru. So God bless you, and may God continue to guide and direct your ministry. So as I've filmed for Lineage, especially with season 2, we did quite a lot of filming in the US. We did filming in Australia and Europe as we filmed the story of Adventist history. And it was very inspiring to go to places that Ellen White was born at, or where she had her first vision, or where she and her husband James lived, and where they had their children, where they were born, where one of their children's died. Went to her grave site. We went to a house in Australia, Sunnyside. We went to a house in California, Elmshaven. We went to where she lived in Michigan. We went to where they lived in New York State. To see the journey of our church its from its beginnings in New England, and as it moved westward to New York and California, and as it obviously went around the world to Europe, South America, Africa, Oceania. It's inspiring to see how the church started in such humble locations. There's a huge contrast. When you go to Europe and you film in regards to the Reformation, you go to University of Oxford and Cambridge, and you go to the University of Paris, and you go to these great educational institutions, and you see statues of these great men that are erected in the city centers for the Reformation. But when we filmed on Adventist history and when we filmed on the birth of Adventism with Ellen White, it was different. We were going to like really kind of humble houses. We were going to farms. There were no statues, and it was, gravestones. It was a stark contrast. And to me, what stood out when filming and visiting the places that were significant to Adventism and Ellen White was how humble and insignificant they were. And it reminded me of the verse in the Bible where it says that, who has despised the day of small things? And also the verse in Chronicles where it says the eyes of the Lord run to and fro, looking throughout the whole earth, looking for people essentially that are weak, on whose behalf God can show his strength. And so to me, the contrast is clear when you look at Ellen White compared to, say, great reformers. The great reformers were often educated men with degrees and spoke multiple languages, and they were like at the top of their game. And for whatever reason, God chose to run the Reformation through the educational institutions of Europe. When he started the Adventist Church, and when you have the Ellen White as one of the founders, you have an opposite. You have God using a 17-year-old teenager who has very little formal education. You've got other farmers and people who were pioneers of the church, and the contrast between the educated formality in the Reformation and the lowliness of the pioneers, Ellen White included, is stark. And it also shows, I believe, how God wanted to use everybody. And he didn't want us as a church to kind of be limited by our background, and recognize that God can use us all. So those are a few of my thoughts on that. I was also asked to share a little bit on the book Education. It's one of the books I read years ago and continue to reference back to as well. I read the book in 10 days, actually. I think it's 300 pages, and I took 30 pages a day and just boom, blitzed through in 10 days. It was inspiring. And I think, to me, the standout is the holistic nature of education, that education is not just book work, but it's a holistic discipline that involves the body, the mind, the soul, all aspects of our being, and that true education involves learning holistically in not just academia, but also in life skills and practical things, and how to be of use in our communities and in our churches. And so I can't recommend the book highly enough. There's famous quotes from the book that you may be familiar with, but how Jesus trained his disciples and his favorite disciples and who he worked with, and those principles of leadership that Jesus gives there are key takeaways from that book. So I want to encourage you in your ministry, in what God has called you to do, to just be faithful. God doesn't always call us to do something great. God doesn't always call the best. When we look at the reformers, he called humble people, and yet they were obedient to the call that God gave to them, and they did all that they could. And God is calling for people today who will also do all they can. They may be humble, poor, lowly, and yet God can use all of us to do great things for him. God bless you.